Welcome guys, this is Jasper from Amsterdam Vintage Watches, and today we're discussing 10 different watches from different brands that are considered, according to me, undervalued. I hope that you agree, and if you don't, I hope to learn from you. Make sure to watch this video before you spend any money on a watch.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Jasper Leifring from Amsterdam Vintage Watches.
Amazing! Love this watch! As in previous videos, I'd like to start with the watch I'm wearing today. On the wrist is an 88101. It is from the, I wouldn't say obscure brand, but a brand that has come back to life quite recently, Universal Geneve, and this is their most beloved model, arguably, the Compax. A spectacular wristwatch, beautifully sized, well proportioned lugs that are curved. We've got a bezel from aluminium. We've got a beautiful dial layout. Yet, to say it's undervalued, it's hard to make a case for that. They go for around 20 to 25,000 euros. Even though it's quite unknown, I think the price is very justified. But today we're talking about 10 other watches that I see a lot of potential in and that I think are rather undiscovered by the masses. So I'm going to present these 10 different brands and watches in no particular order, and I'm starting with one of the watches from the Holy Trinity. Even though opposed to Patek Philippe and Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin is equally important, yet they are not so much represented in today's market, and I feel like they're undervalued, and particularly some vintage dress watches they make. Low quantity, high quality, refined movements. They oftentimes also delivered movement to other manufacturers, and you can see some beautiful watches with magnificent guilloche dials. I'm talking about beautiful fancy looks. Of course, the Corne de Vache is well known with Vacheron Constantin, but they made many other models. Ronnie Madavani is a big lover of those, with very refined cases, oftentimes good sizings between 34 and even oversized up until 38. And I feel like they're worth a lot more than the market is willing to pay, especially if you compare them with the other counterparts of Audemars Piguet or Patek Philippe. The dress watches of those brands from the 50s and 60s are priced way higher and not necessarily way higher in quality or even in quantity. So I think it's a nice niche to collect, or even if you buy just one watch, it will come off as a very gentleman-like choice. Up next, Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso. Arguably, this is historically the most prominent rectangular wristwatch, alongside, of course, the Cartier. Yet, last mentioned, obviously got a lot of attention. It took off in price since 3 or 4 years specifically. I made a video about underrated watches many moons ago, and then I presented also Cartier, and I don't think they would make it to the list today. Yet, the Reverso still does. And in many aspects, it oftentimes generalized brings a better quality to the table than Cartier. If you look at the movements or the finishing, they even provide complications in their Reversos. But I also very much like the Reversos from yesteryears, just the simple ones. They also provide cool metal bracelets, something I really enjoy. And with Cartier, they're often seen on leather. And if they do come with a metal bracelet, you can very much see this represented in the price. So therefore, I think the Reverso brings great quality to the table. And of course, is the watchmaker's watchmaker, so I think they deserve their stripes, and it's definitely a watch you can consider if you have a budget between the 5 and 15,000 euros. The third one is a Rolex. I know many of you didn't expect this brand to make this list, but the Explorer II 1655 should be considered. This is quite an oddball with un-Rolex-like design. You can see it in the dial, for example. It is quite funky with the orange hand. It has a totally different handset, by the way, like the baton kind of sporty hands, but also the tritium hour markers that are square. It's only one of 2 models that ever featured square hour markers. Only the 1019, a specific execution, had square hour markers. But this watch was conceived in the 70s and is the only watch originating from that period, and hence quite the funky design. So therefore I think it's definitely considered to be on this list. And secondly, because even the first execution, so the MK1 with the straight hands, they go for 25 to 30,000 euros. Of course, it's a lot of money for a steel sports watch. You could make the case the other way around, that it's overvalued. Yet if you compare it to all the other first watches, like the 6542 being the first GMT Master, the 6541 being the first Milgauss, the big crown Submariners, for example, or the no crown guard Submariners, the first Daytonas. They all start at a way higher price point. So therefore, I think this watch deserves a lot of praise for its ingenuity in design, but also for the price point. You can still find it if you're a vintage Rolex collector. It's definitely something you should have in your collection. Up next, Breguet, and I would specifically aim at the Daniel Roth era. When he took over under the Chomet brothers, he really brought back the life in the brand, and he did it in a fashion that very much is considered to be Louis Abraham Breguet style. So therefore I praise him. We're of course talking about the classic Complications. They're known for the Perpetual calendar, the chronograph, and most importantly the tourbillon, as they are also part of the inventors of the tourbillon. And the style they executed it with the coin edge cases, the guilloche dials often made in precious metal with the Breguet secret signature on it, the hand style that is very much known by Breguet. It just brings back the French bourgeoisie vibe, and I think he executed those very well. And still, there's only a very small niche of collectors that fully grasp the attention of these watches, that are very interested in these pieces. They're probably not happy I included it in this list, but definitely take a look at those models. And even the later executions, like from the 90s or early 2000s, you can find a lot of bang for your buck there. So this is the only watch that I've never owned, but I'm currently looking for one. So if you're selling it, please do reach out. And I'm talking about Parmigiani Fleurier, and specifically the Toric and the memory time by extension. Michel Parmigiani was a highly talented watchmaker who started out actually restoring watches, but was so good he thought like, okay, I'll just make it myself from scratch, basically, because it's one of the most vertically integrated watch brands. And I'm specifically attracted to the previous models I mentioned. The case looks quite simple, even though it's a rather complex construction. It is beautiful. Characteristic dial, an arrangement in the dial you don't see often, that I very much associate with the 90s and with Michel Parmigiani. So I think this is a watch that definitely could fly, and I've seen some very cool executions. I like the first series. I saw one from Philip Corey, a collector, with an onyx dial. That is definitely something I'm hoping to acquire one day. But this is a brand I didn't discover fully yet. We've only had one, a very complicated Parmigiani with minute repeater and perpetual calendar chronograph. But the Toric, the simple ones, are to me the most aesthetically pleasing. And I think they're quite affordable yet. Up next is Chopard, one of the less family-owned brands. Some associate Chopard more with their jewelry side of things, and would not consider they actually make their own movements. They're the manufacturer of the LUC, and compared to Cartier and Piaget, brands that are also associated with their jewelry department, Chopard still didn't really take off. These other two brands, more recently of course Piaget, went to the moon with their interest, but Chopard is still not there, unfortunately, and I think it does deserve a place among them. If you take a look at the 1860, my personal favorite, it's like a Philippe Dufour, but for a fraction of the cost. A beautiful guilloche metal M dial, a crazy good movement. The 9.6 of Chopard is of course held with high regard among the connoisseurs, and just the classic elegance of this watch definitely should be considered to be worn on your wrist with your suit or your shirt. Yes, Audemars Piguet is represented in this video, and no, it's not the Royal Oak, but arguably it's equally important in their history and the preservation of the brand Audemars Piguet, because it came at such a pivotal time. I made a case for the Canchen Perpetual Classique already. I made an entire video where I elaborately discussed how important and how beautiful this watch is. But if you just take a look at the simple basics, it's the thinnest automatic perpetual calendar that was then launched. The design is very timeless, a beautiful layout, very clean layout. Jacqueline Dimier, the lady who was part of the design team, made a very interesting basic for a lot of varieties. So there are of course different dial colors, of course different metals, different integrated bracelet structures, and therefore it's also very interesting to collect. Yet they start at like 18,000 euro. Rarer examples can fetch higher prices, but I think this is a great watch. to own, even if you just go for one watch that you want to own and you want to have a complicated marvel from the Holy Trinity, historically important, go for a 25548 or 5548 or 25657. Yes, again, I'm coming back to Patek Philippe, the 3970. Of course, it's hard to argue that a watch that starts at 100,000 euros is undervalued, but I would say it's underappreciated relatively. This combination of complications is one of the most important, and the prominent role Patek Philippe played in this did not go unnoticed over the course of many years, many decades. But if you compare it to its predecessors, the 1518 and the 2499, they're definitely in a different price bracket. So the 3970 is relatively affordable, but also very wearable compared to the other ones. And if you take a look at the successors, the 5270 and 5970, I don't find them at all as aesthetically pleasing as the 3970. That really speaks that vintage, the design language that we all adore so much, but has the modern practicality. So therefore, I think this is the perfect period between these two evolutions, let's say. And there are many different series, so you can also start collecting them, different metals, different dials, different markers, different hands. So it's very interesting to dive deep into this specific reference. So you know I don't love the brand Omega, but mainly the modern ones. The vintage Constellation might be the best watch to start your vintage journey in. I'm talking about the 50s, 60s era. They put so much love into these watches. They have automatic movements that are no nonsense. But if you look at the case design, I liked very much the ones with the nicked lugs. If you add the pipe and dial and arrowhead markers, let's say, you've got one of the most beautiful watches, and they're very affordable. Sometimes they even come on cool, beautiful integrated bracelets or bracelets that are detachable. You can wear it on leather too. It's a perfect blend between sporty and chic. Again, many varieties, not so much to collect, I would say, but they are bringing a lot of value to the table, and I feel like you're wearing quite a unique watch that will not go unnoticed, yet it doesn't cost the moon. Number 10. I'm gonna leave this open. You can fill in the blanks. Let us know in the comments what watch you think is very much undervalued or in other regards underappreciated. Looking forward to learn from you too. Thank you very much for watching this video, and see you the next time.